Nathan had spent a couple of wonderful weeks with me in the summer of 1997 after my visit to Las Vegas, and he was due to visit again the following year, soon after my first chemo session. By this time, I'd told his mother of my recent diagnosis, and she was concerned that having Nathan with me for 2 weeks would be too stressful. However, I knew he would be the tonic I needed. Also, after my initial sickness, I wasn't feeling that bad, although I was very tired, which my oncologist, the lovely Dr. Lieber, said to expect. Sure enough, I was pretty much flat on my back for the first 2 or 3 days after chemo. But then I'd get my strength back, in readiness for my next treatment 3 weeks later. When Nathan arrived on the 6th day after that first chemo, I was feeling great and looking forward to taking him and his friend Miloš to SeaWorld in San Diego. I'd been told by Dr. Lieber to expect hair loss on the 6th day following my treatment, but it didn't happen. On the 8th day, when I took the boys to SeaWorld and my hair was still intact, I was sure that because of my numerous alternative therapies, I'd definitely beaten the odds and wouldn't lose my hair at all. We had a fabulous day at SeaWorld and saw as many attractions as we could fit in, including performing dolphins and sea lions galore. But the boys were most excited about seeing the famous killer whale Shamu. One of this whale's amazing tricks was leaping up into the air and then landing his enormous body with an almighty flop into the huge pool, spraying the audience with floods of water. Naturally, most people got wet, especially those closest to the pool. Since we were in the first few rows, we got drenched, but we loved it. It was so much fun. But my laugh soon disappeared when I pushed the wet hair off my face and a big chunk came away in my hand. So this was it. I was losing my hair. On the drive back to Santa Monica, it was very hot. The traffic on the 405 freeway was atrocious, as usual, and the boys were very rambunctious. I was short-tempered with them, which really wasn't me. I never yelled. They calmed down for a while, but boys will be boys, and I couldn't stop them from being silly together, so I was quiet for the rest of the journey. We stopped to pick up a video and pizza to take home, and while Nathan and Miloš settled down to watch the film and enjoy the pizza, I disappeared into my bedroom and closed the door. I lay on my bed and contemplated my next move as another strand of hair fell onto my pillow. There was a knock on the door, and Nathan came in. "What's wrong?" he asked timidly. "I'm sorry I yelled at you, Nathan, but look, I'm losing my hair." He put his arm around me and said, "I love you, Marie. Whether you have hair or not, I'll always love you." Of course, that made me cry. Miloš had a sleepover with Nathan, and the next morning before they woke up, I decided to go to a local hairdresser to get my head shaved. I sat in the chair, but seeing all the other women with their beautiful locks, I knew I couldn't do it. I jumped out of the chair and went back home. I noticed that my neighbour's door was open. George, who was in his 30s, was an avid tennis player and loved Wimbledon. We'd often chat about the game in passing. Other than that, we weren't close and we never socialised. He had a few shady friends who I'm sure were perfectly nice, but they weren't exactly my type. As I approached his door, I could see that he was watching Wimbledon on TV. It was that time of year. He was surprised I was there. "Hey, Marie, what's up?" "Who's your barber, George?" I asked. He looked at me strangely. And then I said that I wanted to have my head shaved, and I told him the reason. "Wow, that's heavy. You should go and see Antonio on Montana Avenue. He's a good guy. He'll sort you out." An hour later, with my friend Judy by my side, I was sitting in Antonio's old-fashioned barber shop on trendy Montana Avenue while he shaved my head. There were 2 other clients in his shop, elderly gentlemen, and as my bare scalp was gradually revealed, they complimented me on the shape of my head, as did Antonio. They were very sweet, so supportive, and made me feel so much better than I'd felt sitting in the hairdresser's chair earlier in the day, surrounded by women with nice hair. When I returned home, Milosh and Nathan also complimented me on my new look with words like "cool" and "fantastic." This was my reality now, and of course I adapted. What else could I do? I got used to wearing pretty scarves and hats and did get a wig, although I rarely wore it because it was uncomfortable. After Nathan went back to Las Vegas, I was feeling a little lost. I continued to volunteer at the children's home, as well as mentoring Cody from Holly Grove. One day in August, we went to visit my friend Stephanie and her 3 girls, who Cody enjoyed hanging out with. There were a few feral cats in Stephanie's backyard, and usually an abundance of kittens. On this occasion, Cody was drawn to one of the newborn kittens, who had the same ginger hair as he did, and he asked if we could take it home. My friend Claudia had actually suggested I get a cat because I lived alone, and she thought it would be company for me, as well as nurturing while I went through my chemo treatments. Since I wasn't allowed to have pets in my apartment, I told her and then Cody that it wouldn't be possible. A couple of months later, Stephanie invited me to her house for Thanksgiving dinner, and I decided that I was going to take the little ginger kitten home. He had to be washed first, though, because he was infested with fleas, and that was a challenge. He didn't like the water one bit. Then we popped him into a cardboard box so that I could take him home safely. Unfortunately, on the half-hour drive back to Santa Monica, he was soon out of the box and running back and forth on the dashboard of my car. He was very confused, poor thing. Every time I put him back, he'd escape. I was afraid he'd get under the pedals and I'd squash him. But thankfully, that didn't happen. We managed to get home intact. I put down newspapers on my kitchen floor along with the cardboard box and some of the cat food Stephanie had given me, hoping that he'd settle. But no, he cried a lot that first night, just like the baby he was, and I didn't sleep either. I was upset, thinking that I shouldn't have separated him from his mother and his siblings, who he was probably missing. I must have felt lonely too. For hours I was in and out of the kitchen trying to soothe him, and then I decided to bring him into bed with me. Well, that did the trick. He wriggled his little body under the covers and nestled behind my knees. I guess he thought that was the best spot to be. I couldn't move a limb for the rest of the night in case I disturbed him, or worse, squashed him. Consequently, I didn't sleep a wink. Although, of course, it's not the same thing, it did make me realize how a new mother must feel with her baby. I named this beautiful little kitten Pumpkin, naturally a nod to Thanksgiving. And I had absolutely no idea what an impact this dear, sweet, furry creature would have on my life. He was exactly what I needed. He was a bundle of love from the very beginning, made me laugh, and was responsible for making me rest. He was my healing angel. Lying on the couch, exhausted from chemo, I'd only have to think about getting up to do something, and Pumpkin would race across the room and jump on my chest with his paws around my neck, his face in mine, forcing me to stay where I was. After I lost my hair, I was sitting up in bed with pillows behind my head reading. I casually went to push hair away from my face and realized that I didn't have any. I was bald. I started to cry. Suddenly, Pumpkin jumped up onto the bed and lay on the pillow behind my head. Not to worry, he would be my hair. Next time, working remotely with Barry Levinson on another Baltimore story. Thanks again for listening.